Hello, welcome to the Earth Chakras Third Chakra documentary. My name is Tracy Allshafer, and I am excited to explore with you this phenomenal chakra, this highly charged, incredibly powerful energy center that resides at the solar plexus, which is just below the heart center in the abdominal area. Manipura is the name of this chakra, which means lustrous gem. And there's lots of different translations about the third chakra. One of them that I have here for you is that it means city of jewels or brilliant house. It's often compared to the heat and power of the sun. And in all of the ancient texts in the Indian culture, the Vedas, of which the Rig Veda is the oldest, there are so many ties to that solar energy. In Hinduism, there are gods named Surya, which is the sun, and then there's Surya, which is the sun. There's also a god Agni, and then there is Agni, which is fire. So there's so many references, as fire is the element associated with the third chakra, which makes total sense. You've got this fiery ball of pranic light in the sky that we have this central star that is our sun. So heat, and not just heat, but molten heat, fire, this intensity comes from Agni. And so in the Rig Veda, there are so many callbacks to Agni, the god Agni. In fact, he is, I believe, the first god that's even talked about in the Rig Veda, and he comes up over and over again. I'll spare you. I was going to read a little bit, but I'll spare you. But pick up a copy of the Rig Veda and you'll hear Agni repeated over and over and over again. Surya again and again and again. Why is that so important? Why is it so important for ritual purposes and for ceremony to have so much talk about the sun and fire? If you think about the element itself, its purpose is transformation. So without fire, nothing transforms, nothing changes. You need fire to literally change the structure of something. It goes from one thing, add fire, it's a whole other thing. So it is the magical component, really, right? It's the magic, it's the stuff that happens behind the scenes, even in the abdomen where we have our stomach fire. You eat food and magically it's turned into energy. And that is all a part of the third chakra. So this is such an important chakra to talk about. The energy of vitality and again, prana, which is this life force energy, or chi or ki. Most Eastern practices, whether it's from Japan or China or India, they talk about the solar plexus area as being the center of our power. Our hara is what it's referred to in Japanese culture. Again, solar plexus is what we refer to it often. But this is where we literally become powerful. When we connect to our third chakra, this power center in the core, we connect to our ego, we connect to our will, we connect to our individuality. So in the first two chakras that we already discovered, the first chakra is all about foundational support. You need a solid foundation to do anything, to grow, to expand. The next chakra, the sacral chakra, is associated more with, okay, moving around, kind of tipping your toe in, right? It's the water element. So you kind of, oh, let me check this out. I'm not quite sure yet. But literally you start to move about, right? From that solid foundation, you explore. Third chakra, it's where it all happens. It's where suddenly you realize how powerful you are. what an alchemist, what a magician, what a powerful creatrix that you are. You're able to manifest anything that you put your heart and soul into. If it resonates on the highest level and for the highest good, and you step into it with authority, boom, this is the chakra that just makes it happen. One of the mantras for this chakra is I do. I do, right? It's not, oh, think about it, or, well, maybe, right? No, it's I do. Even in my favorite sci-fi Star Wars movie, which I don't think is sci-fi, by the way, but anyway, what does Yoda say? Yoda says, do or do not. There is no try, right? So it's like, okay, it's time to just step into your power and make it happen. This is a chakra that scares people. People are scared of their light. They're scared of their power. And sometimes all of that self-doubt just limits us from actually being who we're truly meant to be in the world and being truly happy. So this is a really important chakra to discover, to look through. It's an important chakra to do the work, to heal and move vibrational energy, because this really catapults energy upward. So if we're talking about the whole chakra center, once we get here, this is what drives that spiritual energy fully upward towards the crown of the head. Think about it, from the solar plexus, the next channel is the heart center. So we take all that fiery energy and we move it up into our heart, and we filter it to make sure that it's coming from a loving energy. Because fire can be really, really intense. That's the one thing I notice a lot of people, when they get in tune with their power, get a little crazy. And you have to always temper that. So what do we temper it with? Love. We come and filter that energy through the heart, and we remember that no matter what we're here to do, we don't want to push people. We don't want to bulldoze people over. We want to come up into the heart, and we want to move from this energy of love as we are exploring this energy. It's really a lot to think about. I think a lot of people go through spiritual practices like yoga, and they become really in tune with this energy, and then before they know it, it turns into ego. It's all about that person instead of what are you here for, to be of service or to help the world in some way. Is humanity actually going to be better from your teachings? And also, how are you teaching? How is that coming out? Tempering that energy is difficult. And I know that personally. I'm known as a very challenging teacher. And that's because when I get really passionate about something and I come into that power center and I'm delivering certain messages to people, it can come out really forceful. And I have to constantly remind myself, what is the purpose of this? Am I telling them? Am I sharing this information for their greatest good, or is it something because I want to talk about how great I am or what I've been able to achieve? And you have to constantly temper yourself as a teacher, as a mentor, but you know what? As a human. Because think about your everyday interactions with people. When you get really intensely passionate about something, you want to get your message out, right? And we have a lot of this going on in the world. People have platforms to talk about what they feel really passionate about. This is amazing. However, are you yelling at people? Are you screaming it out, trying to get your message out and getting infuriated and angry with people because they're not listening, or because they have an alternative viewpoint other than you? It's perfectly right to have alternate viewpoints. There are multiple different realities that are actually playing out at the same time. So whatever you're in alignment with, that's going to feel like the reality to you. But there's other things playing out in the world. So can we actually temper that down and listen to other people? And as we're speaking authentically, as we're coming into our power, is it still a really powerful message without knocking somebody over, right? We don't want to hurt somebody else in the process of what we're here to do on this beautiful planet that we have. So this chakra, can you feel it? Like even talking to you, I can't stop my excitement. I'm so charged up just talking about Manipura Chakra. And I just want to say really quickly, if you look around to me, I'm in my mother's bedroom, right? My mother loves the color yellow. Yellow is the color of the third chakra. My grandmother, also very powerful woman. And right behind that cloth right there is my grandmother's sewing machine. And I have to just share this one little story with you because my grandmother really fully embodied Manipura Chakra, and maybe a little excessively, which we could talk about too. She was born with polio. Back then, if you were born with polio, before they didn't develop a vaccine, they didn't know much about it, you were quarantined in a hospital. So as a young child, she was taken away from her family. She was quarantined. She missed a lot of school because she was sick being younger. And my memory of my grandmother is that she had a bum, we called it a bum leg, right? She had her polio leg, so she was unable to walk. But she walked with crutches, and it didn't stop her from doing anything. Well, later in life, she was in a wheelchair, but my earliest memories of my grandmother are really walking with like one crutch and just pulling that other leg around. This woman was told she would never have children by doctors. So she had two. She was told she'd never be able to drive a car. So she did. If you told her she couldn't do something, she did it. She found a way to do it. And not just do it, be really successful at it. Be really good at it. She strived really to prove to the whole world that she had that inner strength to do whatever she wanted to do, really. And so I feel like when I'm around this energy, I really embody my grandmother's charge and energy to be fully present and authentic in herself, and to not let anyone else dictate or tell her what she's capable of. And that is such a strong and intense energy to grow up with, I know. And my mother knows. So you'll notice everything in the room is gold or yellow. That's my mom's favorite color. And I do think that when you are either excessive or depleted in an energy center, either one, if it's on the ends, on the polarities, is that you consciously or unconsciously draw in certain vibrational things that will enhance that. So yellow, right? If I'm feeling really aligned with the third chakra, I might want to boldly wear yellow all the time. Or in my subconscious, if I'm depleted in the third chakra, my highest self might be guiding me to wear yellow or paint things yellow or put yellow around me to draw that energy more fully into my being. So it is a really cool thing to kind of take a look at now, because this is a chakra where we're really fully empowered. So empower yourself to take a look around your home and see what your colors are and how they equate to the chakras. It's really interesting work. So basic properties of the third chakra, again, color yellow. Purpose is transformation. The basic right is to act and be an individual. The identity is the ego identity. And issues are around energy, activity, autonomy, individualization, will, self-esteem, proactivity, and power. So it's just a power-packed chakra, really. Power-packed chakra. You can think about energy in general. What's your overall energy? what energizes you. Think about things that have a lot of energy, like the sun. Do you eat enough foods that equate to energy? Do you get enough sunlight? These are all important things to talk about because we want to be as vital as possible as we're moving through life. So in this chakra, we can do that work. We can talk about all things energy, and that could be a whole documentary on its own. Goals are really good to review when you're working with this chakra. Some people, especially in spiritual places, like to say, I live in the moment, I let the universe guide me, I go with the flow. And I feel like that is beautiful. However, in 40 years, if you're still comfortable with going with the flow and living with the universe, and then that's okay, then that's good. But in 10 years, right? Why am I saying 40? 10 years, 5 years, whatever it is, if you look down the road and you get there and you have regrets that you didn't have the energy or the confidence to step in and do something in your life. Maybe you wanted to take a course or learn something, or maybe you wanted to work at a particular place and you never put the application in. Whatever it is. Maybe you liked somebody and you never talked to them. There's all these things. We can have regrets about millions of things that we never stepped into or did. And goals allow us to really see what our highest self needs, right? So if I'm working in a mundane job that's not really serving me in any way or serving the world much in any way, and in my heart fire, I have a desire to be a vet tech, let's say, but I'm discouraged by the school. I think like it's too much education, or I feel maybe I'm too dumb to learn or too old to learn, or I'll never find the money to go to school. You put all of these blocks in your path to even making any initiative move forward. So if you set a goal, what you could do is say, okay, my highest self really aligns with being a vet tech, and I love animals and I want to help make their lives better, right? So my goal is to be the best vet tech ever. And that's my goal, right? Maybe that's my lifetime goal. Then you can kind of step it back and go, okay, so if that's my lifetime goal, then what would I have to do in like the next 5 years to get there, or in the next year to get there, or in the next month to get there? And it's going to eventually break down to, what's one thing I can do right now to set me on that path? Maybe it's just look something up on the internet. I'm going to just do a search for veterinary schools in my area, or I'm going to do a search for scholarships for vet techs, or, whatever it is. You can go to your local vet and ask them if they take interns. It doesn't really matter as long as there's some initiatory step. You have to step into it. You have to do something. It's do or do not. Not try. Well, I'll try. Maybe I'll look into it tomorrow, or maybe next week, or, well, I'm really busy right now. So as soon as this happens, I have really beautiful people in my life that do that. I'm going to do it as soon as this, or yeah, I know I want to do that, but I'm going to do it after that, right? After the holidays, or, before next year ends, or no. That is a depletion of the third chakra. That's a depletion of the solar plexus energy. If you have a desire, a goal, a dream, an ambition, you have to just make some tiny step now. You have to think about what that is, and you have to put yourself out there. And I find what happens is if you just take that little tiny step, looking something up, making a call, driving past a vet, or right, doesn't matter what it is, it starts to send a vibration through the universe. Something's changed. You've aligned with something else, not the doubt, the possibility. And once you start to align with that, the universe, if it's in that higher vibrational level, the universe is going to go, oh, we're going to send you more of that, because that is really good. That's going to be awesome. And you'll find that maybe the next day, somebody comes up to you and says, you know, I was thinking about going and looking at this this fair at, county college, and you want to go with me because I'm thinking about going back to school. Or maybe somebody comes up to you the next day and says, you're always so good with animals. Do you think you'd watch my dog for this weekend? I have a wedding. Look for all the little signs, because the universe will continue to drive that energy towards you. And eventually, even if you're scared to make that real first step of doing something like signing the application or putting the money down for the deposit, or, whatever the big thing is, if you're worried or scared about that because you don't really know, before you know it, there's no holding back. The universe is just pushing you forward, and the signs are everywhere, and you can't say no, because the universe is just going to start dropping the right people, places, and things into your lap once you align. But you have to do the work, and that's something you can't get out of. You've always got to do the work. It's got to come from you. This third chakra, it's all about your individual energy. The universe will align, but you have to step into it. You have to step into your power. You are powerful, if nobody told you yet today. Whew, so much to talk about with this chakra. So this is the note E and the third chakra singing bowl. It's really powerful, super powerful. Maybe if you need like a little something, you can pull on that to help you move forward. So let's talk a little bit about the Ayurvedic properties of fire and how they equate, obviously, to the third chakra. The properties in Ayurveda of fire, the guna or quality, is that it's hot, sharp, light, dry. The action or karma is brilliance, luminosity, penetration. The kosha that it is connected to, or which is the sheaths of our being, is the manomaya kosha. Manomaya kosha is the mind, right? The wind or air element is associated with is samana. Samana prana is, again, the digestive fire or core energy, if you will. So there is a yogic breathing called kapalabhati, or breath of fire. And this is something that yogis do to really bring up lots of energy. And it is a powerful breath. It translates to skull polishing breath. But breath of fire is like a pumping of the belly, where the belly expands and contracts really quickly. You're breathing through your nose. So it's a diaphragmatic breath, but a rapid diaphragmatic breath. Even just a quick round of 20 will bring up heat in a big way. In fact, we'll see, just notice if my face gets like more red as energy pops up. I'll do just a really short round and you can see, I know you can't see my full abdomen, but that's okay. You'll get a sense of what's happening. So I'm going to take a deep breath and do a round or so. Right on up. Lots of energy. Totally. Woo! Wakes you right up. If you've got a little foggy brain, a couple rounds of breath of fire will wake you right back up. You'll be all right there. Part of the third chakra, again, in the core center, are parts of the body that we need to talk about as well. So if you think about the solar plexus area, it's where most of the digestive organs are. The stomach, the gallbladder, the pancreas. We also have the liver, which is an important organ associated with the third chakra. The core muscles in the body, the six-pack abs that people think about, the rectus abdominis muscles, also the iliopsoas, the quadratus lumborum, the transverse abdominis. So all these muscles that come into that area of the body, if you think about it, if you think about the human body, the rib cage is here to protect the heart and the lungs, right? They're situated inside the rib cage. The pelvis kind of takes care of the ovaries and the sexual organs, right? They're kind of hidden in the pelvis. The middle section of the body, where most of the digestive organs are, we have no bony protection. There's no coverage. So it's all open. The abdominal area is, it's out there. It's just out. It has no protective covering except for the muscles. So the musculoskeletal system, if it's not strong enough, can't hold that long digestive tract in. And there are lots of folds and creases, everything compacted together and put in that spot in the body. And food has to travel a whole long distance through this whole connection of, the large intestine, the small intestine, the colon, everything. So if we have strong core muscles, then that's our protection. We keep everything kind of pulled in and secure. If we don't, and the abdominal area gets larger, as you see in lots of people, the abdominal wall pushes out, and that's because the core muscles are not very strong. And then what you have is now that compacted digestive tract, which is folded and put together perfectly by the universe so that you can transform food into energy. Once that gets messed up, misshapen, bulging out, then you start to have all kinds of digestive issues, right? And digestive issues are rampant in our world. So many people have gastrointestinal issues that I think a lot of people don't even know what is causing it. It could be from weight. It could also be from the food that you're eating. It could be you could have an allergy. I realized I had a dairy allergy many years ago. And when I took dairy out, I started to immediately lose weight. My inflammation, like the chronic inflammation, went down. And suddenly I was feeling more energy, more energized, just from eliminating dairy from my diet. So there's lots of things to think about with respect to the body, and even our whole relationship to food and eating is a significant discussion to have with respect to the third chakra. So if we have, issues like eating disorders, that's something to talk about. That's something that is a third chakra issue. And also muscular disorders, any kind of inflammations, cancers, diseases of the nerves and the muscles. This is all third chakra stuff. So there's so much in the body. There's so much the body can tell us about this chakra as well. So take time to see how your body reacts to eating certain things. How does your digestive tract react when you eliminate certain things? Because this chakra is important for your overall health. And everything you put in your mouth and goes through that digestive tract eventually should be going towards giving you more energy and prana. And if it's not, it's just wasted. You might as well just be eating cardboard. So we could talk so much more about the third chakra. We could talk about what foods to eat. We could talk about what crystals to use. We could talk about what metal is associated with it. Some of these things you'll hear in the discussion that I have with my friend Judy, who lives in Australia. And that is coming up in the third segment of the documentary. Judy O'Donnell will be interviewed along with her partner, Jeff, who was a park ranger in Australia for many years. And the Earth's third chakra, solar plexus chakra, is said to sit in Australia, right in the center of the outback. In the outback is very hot and dry. I think one of the jokes that's always said is that everything in Australia can kill you. And I think that's another reason why, like, every Aussie I've ever met is really spirited and very courageous, setting out on walkabouts. But there's a really magical place in Australia that is supposed to be the Earth's chakra center, Uluru, and its sister place as well, which we'll talk about with Judy. And we do explore lots of these other elements of the third chakra in our discussion. So definitely stay tuned for that. I guess in closing, maybe what I would say about the third chakra, again, it's a powerful energy, but it's so important for any sort of change. And since we are living at a time in the world where energy is accelerating and expanding at quite a rapid pace, and there's so much intensity happening, there are solar flares happening all of the time that when that happens in the sun, has a spike, a flare, that energy comes pouring down to the earth. That wave of solar energy, that burst of fire comes at us. I always notice that either I have trouble sleeping, or sometimes the ringing in my ear gets a little bit more intense. I often find that people seem more intense during these time frames when this solar energy is heightened. We're living at a time where more people are becoming sensitive to energy. So the littlest thing that's happening, millions of miles out into space actually can ripple in and affect us in a big way. And we'll feel that. And we start to react, again, consciously or unconsciously, to this transformational energy that's coming at us. So we find ourselves in a time right now of rapid expansion, of a lot of fire intensity energy on our planet. And there is an urgent call to align to your highest self. There is an urgent call to move into a higher light, a vibration that is more in alignment with unity consciousness and oneness. And if enough people wake up and start to flow into this vibratory energy, because there's such rapid expansion happening. Imagine if just with the energy of transformation, if enough people get here, we can drive a new reality system into being together in such an incredible way. But this chakra, because it is so connected to our individuality, has the ability, when we're not coming from this heart-centered place, to create wedges, to drive people away rather than bring people together. So in my discussion with Judy and in my research and in my understanding of energy, I feel the overall health and well-being of our entire planet, just like energy and vitality is so key to this chakra. The overall energy and vitality in Australia, in Uluru, is vital for the overall energy of our planet. If we're to truly heal everything that's wrong in our world, everything that humanity has created as a problem, if we're truly to step in and power a massive wave of healing and a new reality system where we are all living in unity, I really feel like we have to acknowledge Australia and the people there and everything that's going on there. And hopefully, if that naval center can work together to heal, then it's going to send this rippling current out from that snake energy from Australia out, the rainbow serpent energy that exists in Uluru and flows up to Bali, and then from Bali out, and from Machu Picchu and Peru, Sacred Valley, up into Uluru. We have this beautiful rainbow serpent, and Uluru is key, and Australia is key. And this vital naval center, like literally, if we were to think of the analogy of being inside mom as a baby, in the birthing space and connected to mom by that umbilical cord, there is this invisible umbilical cord from Australia that reaches out and connects to the whole planet. And so there is this urgent need to heal, and this urgent need for unification, and this is a key place for that healing to occur. So in closing, this is it. We can't move upward anymore if we don't claim our divine right to act and to be an individual, but with love in our heart and with unity consciousness in our mind. So such an important chakra and such an important energy that I invite you to sit back, relax, or not, maybe stand up and dance as you listen to the Earth Chakras documentary on the third chakra. Thank you so much for listening.
In our Earth Chakras journey,
The female great dragon, or rainbow serpent ley line, travels south across the Grand Pacific Ocean, past New Zealand's energy vortex, and into the smallest, yet arguably most vibrant continent on planet Earth, Australia. Here, around the ancient sites of Ayers Rock and the Olgas, known to the Aboriginals as Uluru and Katajata, prominently protrudes Mama Earth's solar plexus chakra. These impressive, outwardly naval, projected monoliths in the Northern Territory of Australia maintain the global function of the vitality of the entire planet and all of its living species. The wisdom, strength, and vitality of this land is central to the immortal health of the one whole. The main work to date on the earth chakras is from American visionary Robert Kuhn, who reportedly spent much time with the Aboriginals, receiving permission to share their stories, in which they call songlines. From his book, The Rainbow Serpent and the Holy Grail, Kuhn writes, "The most important songline is the pathway of the great rainbow serpent, which travels all the way around the world. The rainbow serpent is the most vital archetype in Aboriginal philosophy." It is the Aboriginal rainbow serpent, along with the male counterpart, the Mesoamerican plumed serpent, that snake around the planet, connecting power places, energy vortexes, and planetary chakras. So we already get a sense of this immense power coming out of this area of the world. The third chakra, or Manipura in Sanskrit, means city of jewels. It is often compared to the sun's heat and power and is linked to the intensely transformative energy of fire. In the yogic traditions, fire, or Agni, is not merely an element, but elevated to the status of a god due to the incredibly essential vibrancy. Agni is one of the most important gods of the Vedas, man's oldest recorded collection of knowledge, and through him and the energy of fire, most of the rituals and ceremonies of the ancient Indians were performed in his spirit and honor. The sun, or Surya, was also elevated by the ancient Indians to the status of a god, and considered the source of all life, who brings warmth and light to the world. The color associated with the third chakra is yellow. The sun is a yellow star, and in the Aboriginal symbolism, yellow is the color of water, associated with the rainbow snake. The mystical yantra for the third chakra shows an inverted fiery triangle with a blazing sun at its center. The downward pointed tip indicating the origin, the upward widening indicating growth and development. The 10 lotus petals of the sacred design represent the vrittis, or whirlpool, and in this chakra's case, of shame, slandering, envy, laziness, sadness, cruelty, thirst, attachment to objects, hatred, and fear, all of which are qualities of an unbalanced solar plexus chakra. The balancing act of this chakra can be difficult, mostly because a little fire goes a long way. And if not tempered by love, the energy can quickly become unmanageable. In Ayurveda, Agni embodies the quality or guna of being hot, sharp, light, and dry. The actions or karmas of fire are brilliance, penetration, and luminosity. It is also linked to the vayu, meaning air or wind, of samana prana,
or core energy, and in this arena thought of as digestive fires, whose purpose is transference of food into energy. In other words, without fire or its abilities, prana, the vital life force energy within all living things, ceases to exist. That may seem like a heavy responsibility to bear, but if any place could support this great role, it is no doubt the Australian outback, an area most notable for its strength and courage of its peoples, who thrive on a very hot, dry land, where it is commonly joked that everything wants to try to kill you. The Aboriginals are the natives of the land who have lived there since ancient times at the Earth's third chakra, and Uluru is one of its most sacred temples. The great red sandstone monolith seems oddly out of place in the flat outback where it protrudes to an elevation of 2,831 feet. Geologists explain Uluru as folded landscape that over hundreds of thousands of years ago actually tilted onto its side. To the Aboriginal peoples, and as a side note, there are actually about 500 different cultures of Aboriginals in Australia. So for the area we are discussing, it is more precise to mention the Anangu people. Both Uluru and Catapult are sacred beings and not mere landscapes. Legend says the plateau is actually an energy source called Tiukurpa and the location of dream time, which is more accurately known as creation time. The songline of Natawadi, an umbilical cord or wand used in ritual, but also the serpent, tells of a great ritual where all the features of landscape, laws of life, humans and creatures were created. The final ritual act of creation that would complete the great plan of the earth spirit was interrupted. In this legend, once the ritual is completed, death on our planet will cease and perfection will spread throughout the world. It will be through the cosmic umbilical cord that it unites sun with the earth that this completion will occur. The great ritual was said to happen on a precise date, and word is it that it was completed on that date, December 21st, 2020, during a rare Saturn-Pluto conjunction on the solstice. At this time of the documentary, the ripples of this completion are still folding out through the landscape of our world, but surely the significance of completing a deep current of energy previously preordained to happen at Uluru will most certainly continue to contribute to raising the frequencies of vitality and health on the planet for all species. In the human body, Manipura Chakra is located at the solar plexus or core center, where we, as individuals, anchor our own smaller amount of solar energy. Many professionals, including Dr. Mehmet Oz, say that the gut acts as a second brain. Health giant John Hopkins says that scientists refer to this little brain as the enteric nervous system, ENS, and link many discoveries to several other health-related aspects of the human being, such as memory and thinking, indicating how it is quite possible that the overall health of a human may possibly be traced to the overall health of the gastrointestinal tract. As such, we find another link to the significance of the sites of Uluru and Catapult, playing out as a role of overall health in the world. It feels extremely imperative that we listen to the Aboriginal elders, who we now understand to be the oldest civilization on Earth, cultivating life the same as they have for thousands of years, in deep appreciation for the land and its vital significance to the totality of world health. Of Australia, Robert Kuhn said, "Every significant feature of nature vibrates with immortal presence, with energies of life seeking new expression." Of Uluru, biographer Ray Erickson said, "It is as if it stores within itself all that the sun has poured into it." Although I have not personally had the privilege of traveling to the Australian continent, my synchronistic connection to the Earth's third chakra is through the second chakra in Lake Titicaca. When I first landed in Peru in 2015, it was to travel with Jorge Luis Delgado, who was interviewed in the Second Chakra documentary. Due to his schedule, he was unable to allow us to join on our own, but we were able to join a pre-existing group run by a woman named Judy O'Donnell from Australia. It was with this special Aussie group that the most spiritually and energetically transformative time of my life transpired. And of course it would, with folks from the Earth's solar plexus with me. What I have learned about my Aussie friends is that they truly embody the third chakra, where the force of the sun awaits to thrust one into the strongest sense of self and actively awaken the ego, strength, and will in which to act and to be a true, authentic individual. All of the Aussies that I have met are confident, yet playful. They seem to tackle challenges with humor and personify a balance of effective will with great love and respect for others. Most certainly they have embodied the spirit of the land, of the navel of the earth. But don't take my word for it. Let's have a chat with my now good friend Judy O'Donnell of Sacred Site Travel in Australia.
This is just so exciting. I am so happy to be here talking to Judy. Judy O'Donnell and I met in 2015, actually in Peru. And you were such I don't even know if you know how important that trip was to me, and my whole spiritual trajectory changed that year. Meeting Jorge Luis Delgado, meeting Solara, meeting your group, and just traveling with you all through that beautiful sacred land. That was so. Thank you so much for doing this, because we haven't really spoken since then, face to face. And with you is Jeff, or Jeff. Jeff. And you've been a park ranger, I think Judy said, in and around Uluru for a good part of your life. So we're here to talk about the Earth's third chakra, which to my understanding is in and around the area of Uluru and Katajuta. So can you first start by kind of explaining a little bit to me, to our audience, about your connection to that area, and maybe a little bit about what it means to you?
Maybe I'll start off.
Yep.
I've worked as a park ranger, as you said, for most of my life. I'm just retiring at the moment, and so it's been about 42 years I've been working as a park ranger, but not all of it at Uluru. I was there for a couple of years in the mid-90s, but it had a profound influence on myself and my understanding of Aboriginal culture in particular. So I went up there to work as a tour guide initially, working for an eco tour company, and a large emphasis on what we were imparting to the tourists was Aboriginal culture. And so we had to do all tour guides there have to do a training course, which is run by the national park, and the national park is actually owned by the Aboriginal people. It's been handed back to them, so they hold the title for the park. So it's run in joint management. So all the decisions to do with managing the park and training the rangers is all done in conjunction with the Aboriginal people who live there.
Mm.
And they refer to themselves as Oneyogacenter. It's a word in their language, which means we people. So probably a lot of people don't realise that there's actually about 500 different Aboriginal cultures in Australia.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I had no idea.
In different languages as well. So when we're speaking about Aboriginal culture, you need to be very specific about what area you're talking about.
Okay.
So for today, anything that I talk about in relation to Aboriginal culture applies to the people who live there around the Uluru, Katajuta area. Yeah.
Okay.
Can we just do acknowledgement to country?
Yeah, we should do. It's a protocol to do acknowledgement to country when you're talking Aboriginal stuff. So we'll do that.
Okay.
I'll do it in two ways because where we're sitting at the moment is on Bunurong land, south of Melbourne. So it's a different cultural group altogether. So we should acknowledge the Bunurong people where we are and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and future, but also pay respects to the Oneyogacenter people around the Katajuta and Uluru area, because we'll be speaking about their area as well.
Thank you.
So after being a tour guide there for a short time, I managed to land a job in the national park as a ranger, which meant that I was living out in the Aboriginal community at Mudajulu, just at the base of Uluru, and working side by side with the Oneyogacenter rangers there. So it was a great opportunity to learn quite a bit about the local culture, although having only been there for a short time, I know about this much.
Yes.
And in Aboriginal communities, the longer you're there, the more you realise you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's always a lot to learn, and it takes a long time. So I don't feel as though I'm an expert, but I do have some knowledge that I can pass on.
Thank you.
One of the things they say too is that even people like us who have spent a lot of time going up there every year for over 20 years, is that all of the stories that we know, the dreaming stories, etc., are kindergarten, baby kids type stories, because you don't hear the deeper meaning. There's like layers and layers and layers of the story. So it's like if we're teaching our children from babies up to 2 or 3, 4 year old, you'd only tell them sort of basic information, and then as they get older and a little bit more mature, you'd give them another level. So they think of us white fellas as children, and then we only hear the children's level of the stories because their knowledge is so deep. So
how old is it? Do we have an idea? I've heard so many different things about that. One of the sources I just read said maybe 50,000 years or more, but I heard a lot older. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, there's some sites in southern Victoria and other parts of Australia too that have been dated now using modern dating techniques, new dating techniques that are at least 120,000 years old.
That's impressive.
However, if you speak to original people, they'll say, we've been here forever.
Yeah.
So they don't put a date on it.
Yeah, there's also a lot of info coming out now, especially a couple of father and son team that have written heaps of books and got hours and hours of YouTubes and things out too, and doing talking tours around Australia. And they're literally saying through DNA and the dating of all of the things that are being found around the country, the out of Africa theory is kaput. You know how we're all told that everyone came from Africa and they went off to all the other countries. They're proving that that's a lie as well. So his story, as I call history, his story is starting to be debunked big time, and that this was the Garden of Eden and that everybody came from this culture here in Australia. So
when I was a year or so ago, I took an interfaith ministry program, a seminary program, and for my own interest, I was working on a timeline for world religions.
Yeah.
And I did some research, and what was coming up for Australia was the oldest anything that I could find. And I found not a lot, but I found enough information to support exactly what you're saying. And I can't remember the exact source now. I'd have to look it up. I know I did write it down, but I find that to be very interesting in respect to some of the work I'm doing here with determining the connection to the solar plexus, because we have this umbilical cord reference, right? So, so being the birthplace possibly of humanity, or humankind or human beings, being there, and that connection, I think is interesting to me. And isn't there there's a part of Uluru that has that they refer to as part of an umbilical cord or something? There's a part that comes down. I think they refer to it as is it the rainbow serpent? I'll butcher this word. Is that
melter water? Yeah.
Cord, umbilical cord, that's an actual spot on Uluru, is what I read, a vertical stone.
Well, I'm going to use another word that you won't recognize probably. Well, chukapa is the local word, the Aboriginal word for the dream time. They don't like using that word dream time because it infers that someone just invented it in their sleep. So to Oneyogacenter people, it's very real, and it's a way of life, and it's a belief system, and all of that, and it's translated as meaning important law. Law as in L-A-W, but also L-O-R-E, because the stories hold the law. So L-O-R-E means stories, and the law is held within that. So it's really important stuff, and it's not just something that someone dreamed up.
Yes.
So they try and avoid that word dreaming or dream time. So chukapa is the word, and in the chukapa story of Uluru, Nalta water is actually a ceremonial pole.
Okay.
So it represents a pole that when men are doing their ceremonies there, they implant it in the ground, in the ceremonial ground area, and that pole stays intact until the ceremony is complete. And in that chukapa story, the elder men would climb Uluru, plant the pole, and that structure on the rock that is like a narrow piece of rock that's coming away from the moon surface, represents that ceremonial pole. And the thing about Uluru when you go and visit there is that all the features, all the parts of the stories you can actually see in the landscape. So when you walk around Uluru, for example, there's about 5 stories that you can tell on the way around Uluru, which we used to do as tour guides. And you tell the stories as you see the features in the rock. So it sort of goes in a sequence, and if you walk clockwise around the rock, you cover all the features in the correct order as they occur in the stories. So it's quite this connection between the landscape and the stories is quite profound. and it shows the importance of the land for Oneyogacenter people and Aboriginal people in general. The connection between the spiritual beliefs and the landscape itself. So connection to the land is paramount in Indigenous culture, and it is throughout the world as well.
Yes, very much so.
Mm.
And the landscape there, I think, has stumped geologists over the years as to how it actually was created. And Uluru certainly stands out as a very impressive piece of land in the middle of the country. And of course, there's lots of stories about that as well. And I certainly wouldn't want to mess that up. So can you talk a little bit about, I mean, I've heard it was maybe hollow, or there's all kinds of things that are out there, but can you speak a little bit about the stories of how of actually what that rock or that land or that projection actually is or feels like? Or I mean, there's two perspectives, right? There's the I guess scientific perspective, but then there's the actual story that I'm interested in knowing.
Yeah, well, there's probably more perspectives than that, but the Oneyogacenter perspective is that, put very simply, that there were two small boys playing in the sand. They built themselves a sand dune, and it turned into rock. So
that's
very
our
simply,
kindergarten
that's,
level.
that's the kindergarten version.
Yeah.
Okay.
There would be more complex versions that are taught to initiated people, but that's as far as we can go because we're not initiated. So
Okay.
so we're not allowed to know any more detail than that, basically.
Okay.
There's the geologist story as well. Out to the west of Uluru, there's a mountain range called the Peterman Ranges, which about 600 million years ago was higher than the Himalayas are today. So it's had a very long time, because this is a very ancient landscape in Australia, and had a very long time to erode. And in that erosion process, all the red sand that occurs around Central Australia comes from those very big mountain ranges.
Okay.
So that material has been spread out over the landscape through many hundreds of years, thousands of years or millions of years rather, of erosion. And so it's built up this layer of sand, which is about 6 kilometres thick. And some of it, because it's so thick, it's been compressed into rock. And about 300 million years ago, there was an earth movement created by the shifting of the tectonic plates around the Earth's surface. And so it sort of compressed the Australian plate. And so then it's that material has been folded like this, like a blanket gets folded if you push it in from both ends at once. And so
yeah, it does look like that. Yeah.
And so what you see of Uluru at the moment is what's left after another 300 million years of erosion. One of those folds coming up out of the ground, but most of it has been eroded away. So the layers of the Uluru sandstone are actually standing up on their side, because it's part of a fold coming up out of the ground.
Okay.
And it goes down about 6 kilometres below the surface.
Okay.
So it's made up of very coarse sandstone, and as it flakes away, parts of it, as it heats and contracts in the day and night temperatures, parts of it flake away occasionally, and you can see it's grey underneath, but red on the outside. So it's actually rusting.
Oh,
Got a lot of iron oxide in the sandstone.
okay.
So as it's exposed to the air, it rusts and becomes red. But if you actually flake parts of it away, it's grey underneath.
That's interesting.
Until it gets oxidised by the air. So that's the geologist's explanation.
Well, I like that too. Iron is actually the metal associated with the third chakra. So I like that.
Yeah.
I like those connections.
We always say too that it's magnetic. So once you've been to Uluru once, it just keeps calling you back like a magnet. Like it's actually calling us at the moment. And I know because we've been in lockdown in Victoria for 2 years practically. I mean, we've had a couple of little breaks where we could get out of Melbourne, but not out of the state. Or there might have been, I think we've had two trips in 2 years where we could cross just into New South Wales, but not into South Australia, which you need to go to Uluru and stuff like that. So you could talk a little bit about Kata Juda, because you haven't talked about that being, because this
it's kind of, is it like this sister, maybe not sister, I'll let you talk about that.
Well, it's another area of rock outcrop that has similar origins geologically to Uluru, except being closer to the source of material, it's made up of larger particles. In other words, larger rocks about this size, all cemented together. So they call it conglomerate rock. I won't go into the details of that, but spiritually, it's a very powerful place. It's probably more spiritually powerful than Uluru is, and most people don't realise that. But you do get a sense of that when you visit there in person. It's imposing. It's an amazing place. It's spectacular. They're the only words I can use to describe it.
Yeah.
And because it's not one big dome-shaped rock like Uluru is that you walk around, and yes, there's little, ins and outs and water holes around the base of Uluru. Kata Juda is what they call. Kata Juda actually means many heads, and so it literally is lots of different little mounds, and you can go in through. So you've literally got these massive red walls either side of you as you're walking through, and like you're in it instead of around the outskirts of it. It's pretty amazing. It's
made up of 36 domes. We're told, the tourists are always told that it's an important men's place, but I know that there are women's sites there as well. So it's got important sites, but the Oneyogacenter don't reveal any of the chukapa, because they're mindful that in the past their chukapa has been stolen from other places. So they're very protective of that area.
Okay.
It's much more important than Uluru is. That third geological structure nearby is actually what I referred to earlier as Attila, or Mount Conan, which is a major part of the Pleiades story, Seven Sisters story, which is probably the most powerful dreaming story, or chukapa, in Australia. So it's a very special area because of the powerful spiritual connections with the land.
It's really calling now, to the point now, if they open up the borders, we're thinking, do we just get a camper van and just get up into Northern Territory and Central Australia and just go hang out at Uluru and Kata Juda and Kings Canyon and Alice Springs and McDonald Ranges, and then maybe up to Kakadu and just the Kimberley and just go. So not sure.
What do you think it is that is calling you there right now during this time?
A couple of things, and I won't get into the whole COVID-y thing and what's happening in Australia at the moment, because that's a bit negative and not really, well, it is connected to the solar plexus, but there's a lot of stuff happening in Northern Territory with the Indigenous communities, being forced vaccinated and, kids taken and put into detention. Well, I'm calling it detention centres. They're actually calling them quarantine camps. But,
Okay.
and yet there's no COVID there and things like that. And that is, a lot of people are investigating that and talking about how it's to do with their DNA, because they are the oldest living culture on the planet, that they have a unique DNA. And this, I don't know how far we want to go out onto other being stuff, which connects, because the Pleiadian story is off being things, and that's huge throughout Australia, and especially through Uluru and the surrounding area.
Okay.
So I suppose you've actually, the story really well. We could go into the...
I would love to hear that story.
the Pleiadian story, which is, when people say, people that talk about beings from other planets, what a load of rubbish, but it's like it's in all Indigenous cultures. It's across the world talking about the beings that came from the stars and that we are made of stardust, etc. So, and it's very, very deep here. And there's the story of Orion and Pleiades, Orion chasing the seven sisters, which I'll let Jeff tell because he knows it probably be a bit more better than me. But
okay,
I'll come back to that. I'll go to your question about what's drawing us to.
Oh yeah, sorry.
To Uluru.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about.
For me, I suppose it's because we've been in lockdown and had travel extremely limited for 2 years basically, and it feels like we've sort of been hemmed in.
Yeah.
And whole world has been contracted into just a small area, if you like.
Yeah.
And one of the things about being out in the desert country or semi-desert out at Uluru is the wide open spaces and the sense of freedom that comes with that, with being in the big outdoors, if you like. So that's what I've got a hankering to get back there, because it's the opposite of what I've been feeling.
Yeah.
So it feels like there's a real need to do that.
In just my little bit of research about the third chakra in Australia, and I feel if there is validity to this connection, then we're talking about that land, particularly in that area, being the source of vitality and health for the world. And I'm wondering if that's a part of what's calling you there. Is it's such a vibrant, vital area, and if that certainly is the energy of vitality and health and well-being, as from the third chakra perspective, there's a need to really keep that land healthy and vibrant, and I can see where people would be called to go there, especially right now with this worldwide issue we're all working with.
So getting back to the Pleiades.
Oh yes.
Probably a concept we need to talk about first, and that is songlines. Have you heard of songlines before?
I don't think so.
Okay, so it's back in the time of the Chukapa, at the creation time, there were creation beings who travelled the landscape and created it as they went. And so they travelled specific pathways and created mountain ranges and rivers and deserts and all of the things we see around us. And so those pathways that the creation beings took in the Chukapa period are referred to as songlines, because the stories of those beings' travels are held in song. They're held in stories, they're held in songs, they're held in dance, and they're held in the landscape itself. So there's a direct relationship between the stories and the land, because these creation beings created the landscape. So if you can read the land, then you can understand the stories.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Now, so these pathways can travel quite some distance. And Aboriginal people, when they learn the songs become like a map, where you can if you know the next verse of the song, you know what to look for in the landscape to continue your travel along that pathway.
Wow.
So these are traditional pathways that we used for trading and for survival, to find the next water hole or the next food area or whatever was important, or sacred spiritual place or whatever. And that information is held within the stories and the songs that go within. And the kids are taught these when they're young, and then when they go through initiation, they're taught more information and more complicated versions of the songs and stories. So a songline is a pathway taken by the ancestors when they were creating the landscape. And some of those ancestors, or one group of ancestors, were the Seven Sisters, or which we know of as the Pleiades constellation in the sky. So they're represented by that constellation, but they're also represented in the landscape as well, in the land itself. So you've probably heard that expression, as above, so below.
Yeah.
So it comes through in Aboriginal culture quite strongly. Anything represented on the land also has a connection to the sky, because that's where, when people depart this earthly plane, they go to the sky, and so you end up with representations of all of these ancestors in the sky. And the Pleiades is an important story within that. So this particular songline of the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters, starts in Western Australia, on the western coast of Australia, around near the Broome area, and it travels right across Australia. It snakes all around the place, goes through Central Australia, just south of Uluru, a place called Attila, which is the white fella's name for that is Mount Connor, and it goes right over to the eastern coast. So it actually traverses the whole continent, and different Aboriginal groups in different parts of the country along that songline hold the knowledge of that particular chapter of the story, and they'll tell that in detail, and the rest of it they'll tell very sketchily, because that's someone else's culture. So if you want to know the whole Pleiades story in detail, you've got to travel the whole songline and talk to all the Indigenous groups along the area. So you'll get different versions of it in different places, but essentially the shell of the story, if you like, is the same. And it's about seven sisters. In some places they refer to them as emu sisters, emu being a very large flightless bird, similar to an ostrich. And the youngest sister was the most beautiful of all, and so she attracted lots of attention from a particular fellow called Oneyogacenter. Wadi means man in the Anangu language, and he was represented by a dingo, which is a dog character. And they, one version that I've heard is that the sisters thought he was pretty ugly because he had big feet. That's the children's version of the story, of course.
Okay.
So anyway, he was very taken with the younger sister, so he would continually follow them around and try and get close to them and get to know them. And he was a bit of a shapeshifter, so he could change his form and disguise himself as a tree or a rock or a sand dune or whatever to avoid detection, because he was trying to always get closer to them, but they didn't want to have anything to do with him. So they were pretty clever, particularly the older sister. She was very clever, and she was able to keep evading him. And to this day, he's still following them through the sky as well. So when you look at the eastern sky as the Pleiades is rising in the east, it's followed shortly after by Orion's belt, and that represents Oneyogacenter. So he's still following them. And they set in the same order as well. That's the basics of the story. It gets, when you get to more complicated versions, it gets very graphic and it's almost X-rated.
That was second chakra.
But we won't go there because it wouldn't be appropriate.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate this. I love anything you can share because, as I said, my own personal knowledge is so limited.
So I was just thinking while Jeff was telling that too, that talking of the rainbow serpent and the chakras of the planet, when he said that comes in, that songline comes in from over in Broome or just north of Broome, on the northwestern coast of Australia, right up the top west. That actually comes in through Bali, which, have you got the map of the chakras? I'm pretty sure, I think I saw you had that on with Jorge, or
yeah.
So you've got it comes in through Bali, which is the purification centre through the water temple before it hits Australia. And there's a little place just north of Broome called Beagle Bay, which is where the songline comes through, or the rainbow serpent. And the Indigenous people knew then. We went up to this church on one of our trips, and in the community there's a little church, and on the pulpit at the front is a serpent winding up the actual post of the pulpit, made out of mother of pearl shells. So it's rainbow, and all of the church walls have got mother of pearl in it. And there was a pretty amazing synchronicity. Like, a lot of my life is just being led to places. Mum loaned me a book by a local Australian author, and I think I actually took it to Peru because I thought, oh, it's just a story, I'll read it and then I'll leave it, give it to someone, I won't keep it. And it was about an Aboriginal baby being found in Melbourne, and because of the blanket they realised that it was from that north of Broome area. So they went back and found, and it went to this church. And at the same time I was reading a factual book about the rainbow serpent, and it was talking about this church at this thing, and I was like, what, I've got to go. So it's like, let's go check this place out. So the sort of the factual and the story always weaving through. So yeah, it comes in through there, comes through Uluru, which is the solar plexus of the planet, and it comes across through to Victoria and goes out through one of our favourite places here that we go camping or to stay. We've got friends now. As we get older, we cheat and stay with friends and drive into the national park, don't campers. But yeah, we've got several friends live at the last little village before you go into the national park. And that's called Wilson's Promontory, which literally is a promontory that sticks out, and it's just stunning, beautiful landscape. And that is where the rainbow serpent leaves mainland Australia, goes across to Lake Titicaca.
Yes.
So that's another, and I found just about every year, without even planning, before we went to Uluru to take our groups each year, there was always a calling to go down to Wilson's Prom to connect in with there before we went back up. So obviously we were doing energy work, even unconsciously. It was just like, one of my friends would ring and say, oh, come down for the weekend, we're doing this or whatever, and there'd always be, just before, there'd be that connection to go back through there. And there was something else I thought of too. Can't remember what now. I waffled off on a different timeline. But anyway, yeah, so there is connections there going through. Oh, and Wilson's Prom used to be, before the sea levels rose, used to be connected to Tasmania, which is our little state island down in the ocean down there. That used to be a land bridge where they could walk across until the sea levels rose and it made it an island. So that was the last piece of the land that went across to Tasmania too.
Now, it's interesting because everything you just said about the rainbow serpent coming down, cleansing through the Balinese water makes complete sense to me. I've been to Bali a couple of times. I feel that.
Yeah.
But another thing that another source that I'm working with a little bit reads that the rainbow serpent travels in the opposite direction, actually.
There's two. It's like our energy lines going in and out, in and out, in and out. So you've got the rainbow serpent going one way, and then you've got from the Mayan culture, the Central America, have Quetzalcoatl, which is the plumed feathered serpent going the opposite direction.
Well, we're talking about massive, energy on a planetary level, and
exactly,
And so Judy, when you're there, when you are in that area, do you feel this connection of a vital energy source? Can you palpable energy?
Yeah. It's hard to explain, but it does. It's almost like I said, a magnet that we just keep going back. It's like a revitalizing thing. But another thing that I can't remember who taught me, whether it was a Native American or an Aboriginal person here, but a lot of people, when they go to sacred sites, they're like, give me. I was told, don't say, give me. It is, what can I offer you? And give back to the sites, which is very Indigenous people here are very much. It's like, we are here for the mother. We don't take from her. She gifts us, but we give our energy back, and we do what.
It's the same principle that Jorge talks about in Peru. Reciprocity, giving and taking.
So
the two go together. You can't have one without the other.
Absolutely. And I know that he's talks a lot about asking permission before you enter certain sacred sites and areas, and I'm sure it's the same.
Same here.
Definitely. Indigenous people everywhere.
Yeah. They wouldn't even cross a boundary or border. Like, they don't have borders, of course, but they knew that river was the boundary between our mob, which is what they call them. They call themselves mobs here, or it's a very English name, but our mob, the Bunurong where we are, or the Anangu at Uluru, or the Wurundjeri a bit further up over the river from us, or whatever. But so wherever the boundary was, they wouldn't even walk onto that country without getting permission to come onto their country. It's like they say, if I come and just set up a tent in your front yard, would you be happy with that? Wouldn't you prefer for me to come in and knock on the door and say, hey, Trace, can I come and put my tent on your front garden, please? And then you give me permission to or not. That's how they look at it.
Right.
It's like, we're in charge of, well, not in charge, we're caretakers of this piece of country. Another thing that just popped into my mind too is that each of those countries had like a totem, and so they would be responsible for looking after that particular animal or bird or whatever too. So it was really intricate, like really wasn't it? Like, the deeper you go into it, the deeper it gets.
Well, particularly when you're talking about totems, because you can have lots of different types of totems. Like, for example, a whole nation of people will have a totem, but also the individual clans within that nation will have their own totems. But also individual people will have their own totems depending on the country that they were born in. And the people that they were born to. So there's a whole different layers of totems that people abide by, and they believe that they're direct ancestors of those totem animals or totem plants or whatever their totem might be. I know an Aboriginal woman in Alice Springs right in Central Australia. Her totem is maggot.
Oh,
quite interesting. You wouldn't choose to have that as your totem. And us white fellas, we tend to, if we're if we had the choice and we're choosing a totem,
Yeah.
we choose, whale or
Eagle.
kangaroo or something real that we really like.
Yeah.
Something regal or majestic.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't have a choice in what your totem is. It's given to you at birth.
Yeah.
Depending on what your mother might have seen, the first thing you've seen, she saw as you were giving birth, as she was giving birth to you, for example. So
I've never looked into maggot energy.
No.
I wonder.
Intuitively, I'm thinking they clean up the dead carcasses and stuff, don't they?
I mean, they do play a role, right?
Yeah,
everything
they plays a role. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
An important role.
Yeah,
absolutely. But that perception initially
yeah,
have of that, we have to kind of get over that because there's such a deeper understanding there.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So if we can kind of talk a little bit about the people of Australia in general, talking about third chakra, it's ego, it's will, I think of it as inner strength and courage, and I think that a lot of the Australian people that I met embody that to a great extent. I don't know if you feel like that's there's exceptions to the rule everywhere, but certainly over the years of meeting people out just on their own little walkabout, just kind of taking off, going into the world, unafraid, just wanting to explore, wanting to put themselves out there and just experience the world and life. So every Australian I've ever met, and with your group, I remember the first time we were walking up to Sungate.
Yeah.
And the altitude's a thing. And I had to stop quite a bit. Not your women. You're just like walking around, just like, whoa. Look, and I thought maybe I was in better shape, but no. I mean, they're strong, and they just kind of just tore up towards me and left me in the dust.
Sorry about that.
I caught up, but I do. I feel that certainly everybody that I have met has embodied that strong solar plexus quality, and maybe that goes back again to what we were saying before about Australia being such an important place to the overall health of the world, and that you guys hold that space. Even what do you feel about that? Do you think that's accurate?
It is, well, most of my friends, I must admit, people that I connect with are pretty empowered, and of course, as you said, there's always exceptions to the rule, and we do have a lot of people that are sort of cowering in their house and putting their mask on and too scared to go out. The whole time I've just said I'm not going to be muzzled basically, so I've never worn a mask. And when we had 5 kilometers out of our house, we weren't allowed anywhere outside 5 kilometers. I was like, I'm going wherever I want. So yeah, I'm a bit of a rebel, and there's a lot of us over here that are exactly the same.
I refer to it as being fiercely independent.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like we sort of, those of us that I think are awake and have embraced our spirituality, I believe what we're going through now globally, without going into it, is a spiritual war, and it's about stepping into our power, which is why I think the focus is on Australia, because it is our power centre of the planet. And our Indigenous people, for 230 years since white man arrived here, have been very much suppressed and pushed down, and taken off their land. You've heard about the stolen generation taking their children. That was all planned to disempower this country, and taking them off their country and putting them in, what did they call them?
Missions.
Missions. Yeah. on other
Well,
people's country, which means that their
we did
story
it.
and the connection, exactly, it's the same in America to the Native Americans.
Unfortunately,
in
right?
Canada. Yep, it's happened globally. But speaking about the people here, they were told not to speak their language, that was Satan's tongue. So they had to learn English, and if they were caught speaking their own tongue. But of course, you know, there was the rebels, who the grandmothers, which I think that's most cultures too, that it's the second generation that teaches. So the grandparents teach the grandchildren, it bypasses the parents with the knowledge. I think they were, you know, secretly, the grannies were secretly keeping that knowledge alive in a lot of communities. Some lost it totally, where the biggest cities were. So those generations now, just in the last probably only couple of months, have really started to step up. And there's all these different mobs talking sovereignty, talking tribal nation, that, you know, this is a corrupt government, we will not obey these rules anymore. Literally getting together. I just heard yesterday, I was listening to a little thing that someone, I think, where was he even from? That guy I was listening to when you went into Swan. I can't remember even where he's from. I think he's Victoria, though. We're around the same area as us, not right here on the peninsula, but saying that there is going to be, what we've had for probably 50 years in January, is what they call a tent embassy outside the Australian embassy, Australian Parliament House in Canberra, which is our capital, like your Washington, DC. So Parliament House in Canberra, which is the Australian Capital Territory, they've had for 50 years next month a tent embassy where there has been someone, an Indigenous person or some, camping in the grounds of Parliament House, saying, we've never ever given this country back, you took it illegally and we will not leave, this is our country, this is our country. Now they're all going to go up for the 50-year anniversary, and they're saying, anybody who wants to come, if you're white and will respect our ways, come on up. We're just going to have everyone come from the whole of Australia, all the mobs all go and stand and take back our country. So it's like, it's really big.
You're doing it too, aren't you? You're going to go. Are you going to go?
My diary. I got home, we were out doing jobs, went to lunch yesterday with some friends, and on the way home did a couple of jobs, and I thought, oh, while Jeff's in doing that, I'll just have a look who sent me messages, and that was it. And I was like listening to him. I had to put on charge and keep listening, and I quickly wrote it down on a bit of paper and stuck it in my diary, and I thought, yep, January. So 50 years they've been sitting there saying, this is our country, we're taking it back. And as they say, this is not for us black fellas, this is for everybody. If you were born here or came here to live, this is your country, you've chosen to be here, and what happens here will ripple out. So when you were saying earlier that your husband said America is going to save the world, I always thought that too, but I'm thinking now what they're talking, the ones that I'm listening to, all these Indigenous elders that are talking from all around the country, they're really coming out big time at the moment. And they're saying, when we break this, you know, have you heard of the 5 eyes, the 5, America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia and England? So they call them the 5 eyes, that are all the, you know, under the Queen, Commonwealth, etc., were the ones that were the most taken over. All our Indigenous people were taken over. So that once we break that lock here, it will break it for all countries. So that's power.
I have to feel in more alignment with you than my husband about America. I really do. I mean, I think that there's potential, and I do think that a lot of pockets are going to pop up, and that if we can all, you know, kind of come together in a collected energy, that it can happen. And you know, that brings up another thing I wanted to ask you, because there was a story about an interrupted ceremony that was supposed to be finished in 2020, and now we had this whole situation. Did that occur? Did that not occur?
It occurred. That was the beginning of last year. So it was on January 21st last year, which we went up to. We actually had decided in 2019, when we took our group up, also took my last group to Peru, and I said, that's my last one. I'm not doing Peru anymore. I said, we're not going to do Uluru anymore. And New Zealand, my Maori elder, who I used to come over to New Zealand, her doctor said, you can't travel anymore, or you can't fly anymore because of, you know, illnesses, etc. And I was like, wow, looks like sacred site travel is going to die. Won't be doing Uluru, mainly because Uncle Bob Randall, who was our beautiful traditional elder, had passed away. The Indigenous people at Uluru were starting to get, unfortunately, not local dancers and storytellers. Some of them were, but a lot of them were coming in from other mobs around Australia. But you could go to the resort and see Indigenous stuff happening, which was awesome. So we didn't have that edge of having the connection to take you out on country and meet the Indigenous people, etc. So it was almost like Spirit was just saying, chop, 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 you know, no more sacred site travel. And then COVID hit. So I hadn't put any energy or time into arranging all the trips and putting it out there, because I thought I'm going to have a year off and that's it. And then COVID hit, so I couldn't go anyway. And we were actually up on a holiday, and I just opened up an email and got this thing about 21st of December at Uluru. And I went, oh, Jeff, let's go, you know, the Cosmic Consciousness Conference. And he goes, I thought we weren't doing Uluru next year. And I was like, no, this isn't taking a group. It's literally 3 phone calls, 1 book an accommodation, 1 book the tickets, 1 book the thing. That's it. We just go by ourselves. And he was like, oh, it's really hot up there in January. Do you really want to be up there in January? It's like 40, 50 degrees. And I was like, well, the conference room's air conditioned. The apartment is air conditioned. And the plane will be air conditioned. So yeah, we can do it. Come on, I'll book right next to it. So even when we walk from the conference room, it'll be air conditioned straight into the next one. So we booked to go, and that was the ceremony.
Wonderful. Yeah. So how do you feel about that? Do you feel like it did what it was supposed to do?
Yep, definitely. And then there was a second part in the December. So it was like a January and then December, which we didn't go to the December one, but we were there for the January one. So, and there has been, like I said, this rising up of Indigenous people from all around the country now have really stepped up this year and just saying, that's it, we're not going to take this anymore. We're taking our country back, and, you know, we want you all to stand together. Did you say whale when we were talking about animal totems? Because that's another thing. When I do my drum making, every single workshop for 20 something years, I read the whale medicine from the Native American animal cards, medicine cards. I don't know if you know those.
Yes, I have them.
Yeah. The whale medicine, there's a line in that every time I read it, to the group that are making their drums, it's that a comet or is it a comet? Something will come from the sky and land in another ocean on Mother Earth, and that all the medicine teachers around the world are waiting for this event to represent Earth's next change. And that all people, all of Earth's children, I think the wording is, all of Earth's children will have to unite and honour all ways in order to survive. And every time I read it, I get truth bumps all over me and just go, that's what we have to get. We have to come together as one. Doesn't matter whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, whatever. It doesn't matter whether you're Indigenous or white or yellow or red. We come together as one humanity.
Absolutely. So, yeah, no, I got that. It came goosebumps from my heart out from my whole body.
I'm calling them truth bumps instead of goosebumps now.
I like that.
Yeah.
So rings so true. I love that. I'm gonna have to pull out the whale card. The whale.
Yeah, read it again
and read that again with that understanding now.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you know, just before COVID hit, because I think COVID is, like, we know, well, if you've been following the non-mainstream media, that the actual what's it called, virus hasn't been isolated. So what they're testing for is anything, so it's all a scam anyway. But I look at it from a bigger picture, that it actually was needed to shake people out of their stuck in, you know, just go to work,
Complacency.
complacency and thinking everything's normal. And it's like, it's not normal. We're not living on the planet how we should be. We're polluting it. We're allowing stuff to go on that we should not be allowing. It's time to wake up and go, enough is enough. Let's come together and look after our mother.
There's so many layers to the energy, and certainly we needed that wake up. We all needed to become aware of many injustices that are all coming to the surface. There's so many layers of what's happening because of this. And yeah, I see it as such a big thing, and it's going to play its course out, its way out. But I think I'm on the hopeful side of enough people getting behind it, and behind the positive energy, the light energy, and moving us into the right place. I don't go to the other side of that conversation. That's just me. I have my husband for that. We balance each other out.
I like delving in and looking at it and going, whoa, and that gives me more strength to go, no way, that's out. We're going this way. We're not going to allow it. So when they say the great reset, I just go, no, great awakening. We've already won. I know we've already, light has won, and God has, or goddess or whoever. Yeah. Absolutely. And it is really starting to happen. I'm seeing it more and more and more people. Like we had Uncle Max, who we also had been taking groups for the last few years to New South Wales and doing a pilgrimage up to their sacred mountain, and doing ceremony up there. He's another beautiful, beautiful elder. He called probably only about a month ago. He put a call out and said, all elders all around the country and all around the world come together on the eclipse, which was just last Saturday, and do ceremony and put the energy back into the mother. And I was going to do something here on the peninsula where we live, but I was in Facebook jail. So I couldn't share anything. Yeah.
You said was it 7 consecutive Facebook jails, you said?
Yeah, I got 24 hours originally, then I got 7 days, and then I got 30 days, and I was out for about a week, and then another 30 days. So I've had 30 days over the last year and a half of not being able to post or comment or do anything. But so yeah, I was in Facebook jail, so I couldn't put anything up about it. I also, where we do our ceremonies on a beautiful mountain here in the peninsula, a great big tree, we had massive storms went through, and a massive huge trees fell down and blocked the whole entrance. So they've just closed the gates, put tape across and said closed. And I was like, oh, well, we have it. And so it was sort of in the too hard basket to arrange anything. And then my daughter, who lives in London, sent me a little thing that her mate from the peninsula here was organising, and she's Indigenous. And I was like, oh, well, let's support her. That's even better. Great. And that was over on Phillip Island, which is on the other side of the next bay from the peninsula that we live on. And so I just started sharing that as soon as I got out of jail. I just started, Facebook jail. I shouldn't say jail. But, from my being censored. Anyway, I thought, I'll put it out to my lot, and she'll put it out to hers. However many turn up will be great. And there was about 500 or 600 people turned up to do this ceremony, and they did. She actually said, oh my God, I went up to say hello when we arrived, and there was just people pouring down the steps down onto the beach, and she's going, God, I'm getting really freaked out, because she's only young, and it's like, haven't done this sort of thing before. And I said, no, you'll be sweet, mate. Honestly, just pretend there's only 4 of us here, and I've got my eyes closed, okay? And I'm not even watching you. They did an excellent job, her and her partner, and it was probably, I counted approximately, there's probably about 30 there, there's 100 when we're down, and wow, okay. So probably 500 to 600 people, and they got us all up, and they were playing the yidaki, which most people call a didgeridoo, but didgeridoo is actually the sound that comes out of the instrument, so it should be called a yidaki.
Oh, okay.
So we're trying to get everybody to flip over to the right word there too. So anyway, so her partner was playing that. She had her clapping sticks, and they got us all to get in a circle, and to how the Indigenous people sort of stomp on the ground to put the energy in, just to go round and round and round, stomping, stomping, stomping. And it was so powerful. Someone had a drone, and they actually got overhead footage of this circle of people just going was creating this thing right as the eclipse was happening. So yeah, it was powerful. And then I've seen footage since then that other people have sent from other parts of Australia, that other people did it and they were all doing their ceremonies at the same time. So there's a lot of stuff happening where the Indigenous are really starting to rise up and come together to say it's time. This is a massive shift.
Yeah. Yeah, the shift has to come. And what a better place to do it than your amazing country. The energy there, I think, without being there, just knowing people and doing some research, I really feel that we can change things over.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yeah, there's a lot of us actually saying, depending on what timeline you're on, like there's the two timelines where some of us have already stepped up onto this, we're living in heaven, it's gorgeous, what pandemic is there? Let's just shift and start living this new reality. And even, you know, the groups that are happening since the last few months, where the doctors that can't work now, the nurses, the vets, the whatever, nutritionists and you know, the massage therapists, there's so many that have just said, well, you know, I won't put a toxic jab in my body. They're coming together now and saying, well, how do we support each other? And the new communities that are being formed is incredible, just really beautiful. People that have said, well, you know, I'm not going to have my children jabbed. They're creating their own schools and kindergartens and playgroups and things, and it's all out in nature, how it should be. It's not stuck in these little construction boxes and pharmaceuticals. So it's actually really good stuff. Really,
I love that you're saying that. It's a validation of something that I've said to some people recently too, because you can clearly see these two timelines playing out. And what you've chosen, which path you've chosen, you start to align with more people, and people are going to start supporting each other a lot more. In that area. And so you have, there's a big choice to be made. Where do you want to spend your time and energy? And let's hope that more and more people can wake up to understand what we're here to do, right? What we're really truly here for on this beautiful planet of ours.
I think we're going through massive times now of discerning what is real and what is not, what's illusion. And it's only by coming into our center and just connecting to the mother, as they say, connect to the mother. And I've got a few friends who just say, you know, our nature is our friend. Nature is our friend. Get out in nature as much as possible.
Well, I really appreciate this conversation and you taking this time out first thing in the morning to talk to me. I loved hearing all the stories and connecting with you, and just so appreciative. So thank you. Thank you very much for being a part of this. But so thank you both very much, and just sending you waves of good energy and blessings for positive flow coming to you. And
it'll come back out of Australia and over to you.
Let's keep sending it through the pipelines.
Exactly.
Both all over the world. Awesome.
Beautiful.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Tracy. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.